I still remember the phone call that changed everything. It was late evening, the kind of silence that settles in a house when there's nothing left to do but wait for sleep. I heard a melody that shattered the tranquility, and my heart clenched before I even realized why. When I answered, I heard the words that haunted me all the days that followed. My half-brother and his wife were gone, killed in an accident. My nephew, dear sweet David, survived, but barely. My world, which had always quietly revolved around my routine, was about to change in ways I could never have imagined. When I first saw David in the hospital, he looked small and frail, almost like the child he once was. Wires and tubes connected him to machines that beeped and buzzed as if fighting for his life. His parents were gone, and the weight of that fact hit my chest like a stone. He had no one else, and that's when I realized that he would come home with me. I would take care of him. I didn't hesitate for a second, because he was all I had left of my half-brother, and he needed me. He needed someone to love him, and I was willing to be that person no matter what it cost me. That was a few months ago. Since then, our days have fallen into a gentle rhythm. I've learned how to help him, how to hold him without making him feel like a burden. I do everything I can to make him comfortable so he knows he is safe. In the mornings, I help him stretch his legs and make breakfast, always trying to remember what he likes best. I make his favorite scrambled eggs, crispy bacon and toast with just the right amount of butter, watching his face for the slightest hint of a smile. Sometimes I catch it, a brief flash of warmth, a reminder that there is still joy in this world, even after all we've lost. David is 22 now, but sometimes when I look at him, I still see a little boy with a skinned knee running to me for comfort. Only now I'm the one holding him together, trying to stitch his broken pieces together into something whole. He was always such a bright boy, full of laughter and dreams, and it breaks my heart to see him trying to find his place again, to get back to who he once was. But I'm here, and I'll be here as long as he needs me. I will do everything I can to let him know that he is not alone, that he will never be alone as long as I am around. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the warmth of the day sank into the cool embrace of night, I found myself kneeling before him. The doctor said he needed to massage his feet to improve circulation in his legs. It was a simple enough activity, but there was something intimate about it, something that stirred depths in me that I didn't dare explore too closely. David leaned back on the couch, his eyes half closed, trusting and defenseless, while I worked the arches of his feet, pressing my fingers into the tired muscles. I focused on each movement, on the way his skin felt under my touch, warm, soft. I told myself it was just another part of caring for him, another way to help him heal, but there was a quiet happiness in it too, a comfort I found in our closeness. Massaging his leg, I could feel the tension in his body begin to ease and wondered if he knew how much it meant to me, that he trusted me enough to let me do this for him. I smiled at him, and my heart ached with an affection that was deeper than words could express. "How does it feel?" I asked, my voice soft, barely above a whisper. He opened his eyes, a slow smile curved his lips, and he nodded. "Feels good, Aunt Maggie," he said, his voice tinged with relaxation. "Thank you." There was something about the way he said it, the way his eyes met mine, that made my chest tighten. I quickly averted my gaze, focusing again on his legs and the rhythmic movements of his hands. It was nice to feel needed, to have someone relying on me. I'd spent so much time alone, but with David, the house felt warm, alive. I hadn't realized how lonely I was until I had someone to care about, someone who smiled at me, someone who said thank you like it really mattered. I finished the massage and gently placed his foot on the floor, patting his leg. "You need to rest," I said, rising to my feet. "I'll bring you some tea soon." David nodded, his eyes already closing, and I froze for a moment, watching him. He looked peaceful, and I felt that familiar warmth fill me again, a sense of purpose, of belonging. I turned and walked to the kitchen, my steps light and my heart full. This was enough, I told myself. Caring for him, being there for him, that was enough. And yet, as I filled the kettle and put it on the stove, I couldn't escape the feeling that there was something more between us, something unspoken, a quiet truth I'd been hiding deep, even from myself. As I waited for the water to boil, I thought back to the first few days after he'd come home. He'd been so weak then, barely able to move without writhing in pain. I had to help him with everything from getting out of bed to bathing him. These moments were difficult not only because of the physical exertion, but also because of the vulnerability that was demanded of both of us. I could see the confusion in his eyes, the frustration of needing help with even the simplest of tasks. But I didn't waver, didn't hesitate. I wanted him to know that I was there for him, that he could rely on me without shame. And gradually, day by day, he began to trust me more. He stopped apologizing for needing help, stopped trying to hide his pain. He let me in, and I treasured that. It was in the quiet moments when I helped him shave or held his hand as he struggled to take his first steps that I realized how much he meant to me. He wasn't just my nephew. He was the reason I got up in the morning, the reason I smiled and hoped. He gave my life a purpose I had never known before. I remembered sitting next to him after lunch and reading his favorite books aloud, trying to bring a sense of normalcy back into his life. I watched the way his eyes followed the words, the way his lips curved in a weak smile at a funny passage, or the way he closed his eyes and listened as the story became more poignant. In those moments, it felt like I was giving him a piece of the world he'd lost, reminding him that even after all the darkness, there was still beauty and meaning. We could sit alone for hours, immersed in stories that brought us closer together. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, we would play board games or cards, and laughter would spread through the house in a way it hadn't in years. In those moments, I realized how much David had become a part of my world, how much his presence filled a void I hadn't even realized was there. I caught myself watching him, watching the way his eyes lit up when he won, or the way he feigned disappointment when he lost, and I felt my heart sink with a tenderness that was both beautiful and terrifying. He was my everything now, and that realization scared me as much as it calmed me. I smiled, shaking my head to clear it up. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. What mattered was that David was here, that he was safe, and that I could take care of him, and that was more than enough for the moment. The kettle whistled, and I poured hot water over the tea leaves, watching the rich color seep into the water. I carried the cup into the living room, where David had already drifted into sleep, his face relaxed, without the lines of pain that so often marred his features. I set the cup on the table beside him, brushing a strand of hair off his forehead. I lingered on his forehead for a moment, my fingers lingering on his skin, feeling the warmth emanating from him. My heart squeezed with a tenderness I couldn't put into words. I leaned down and kissed his forehead softly, barely touching his skin with my lips. "Good night, David," I whispered, my voice catching in my throat. As I turned off the lights and headed to my room, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. No matter what tomorrow brought, no matter what challenges lay ahead, I knew that we would get through them together, and that, more than anything else, gave me the strength to go on. For David, I would do anything. I would be his rock, his safe place for as long as he needed me. And maybe that was what true love was all about, being there for him, no questions asked, no expectations, just because you couldn't imagine yourself anywhere else. And for the moment, that was enough. In the quiet of my own room, I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, my thoughts returning to the life we'd built together. I remembered staying up late, sitting by his bedside and watching over him when the nightmares came. He never talked about what haunted him, but I could see it in his eyes, the pain, the fear, the memories that didn't want to let go. And all I could do was be there for him, holding his hand, whispering that he was safe, that I wouldn't let anything happen to him. It was in those moments, in the darkness of the night, that I realized how deeply I cared for him, how much his well-being had become my own. I remembered helping him dress in the mornings, the way he smiled at me. a soft, grateful smile that made my heart flutter with a tenderness I couldn't explain. There was something about the way he looked at me, something in his eyes that made me feel like I was the most important person in the world. And maybe to him that was the case. Maybe I was the only thing that kept him going, the only person he could count on when everything else was cast aside. And that was a responsibility I held dear, a burden I was willing to carry as long as he needed me. Closing my eyes, I thought about the future, about the days, weeks, and months ahead of me. There would be more hardships, more moments of doubt and fear, but there would also be laughter and warmth and love. There would be evenings spent playing games, mornings filled with the aroma of breakfast being prepared, and quiet moments when we would sit together, just enjoying each other's presence. And that, I realized, was enough. It was more than enough. For David, I would do anything. I would be his rock, his safe place as long as he needed me. And maybe that's what true love was all about, being there for him, no questions, no expectations, just because you can't imagine yourself anywhere else. And that was enough for now.